guys, it's Jeff. So in this video, I want to talk about refusal of new gun laws that may be coming out on the books. Now, Thomas Jefferson said that eternal vigilance is the price we pay for liberty. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, he means that in order for us to remain free, we need to remain in the fight to preserve and protect and defend the Bill of Rights that ensures or enshrines our freedom in this country. Because there's always going to be people who are going to sell a narrative. If you give up a little bit of your freedom, you can have exponentially more security. Now, we know that's a lie. We've seen that across the world where politicians sell that to their people, they become totalitarian, they enslave their citizens, they murder their citizens. And we know from history that this is one of those things that will cyclically repeat itself over and over again. Now you see here, I've got a gun. I just wanted to share this off real quick. This is the IWI Zion 15. This will be the prop for this video. So just wanted to show you that real quick so you know what it is that we're looking at. So in this video, what am I going to talk about? Well, I'm going to talk about the laws that have a chance of passing in this legislature. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been put out there by the Biden administration about what he wants to see, but I think that there are certain laws, even with the 127, HR 127 already in committee, I don't think bills like that have a chance of passing. And I think there are certain bills that we will see come out of this Congress that do have a real chance of passing. So I just want to talk about those real quick. I want to talk about Second Amendment sanctuaries in this video. I think there's some really encouraging language coming out of some of these municipal governments that are ensuring that there's a situation where the federal government can't enforce laws in these states. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And then sheriff's refusals kind of ties into the previous topic, but I want to discuss that in a little bit more detail. So let's just get right into it. So laws that I think have a legitimate chance of passing in this legislative session will be red flag laws, universal background checks, and raising the legal age of ownership of firearms to 21. Now, I think there's a lot of pushback that the Democrats are feeling, especially with the number of guns that have been sold across the United States. And a lot of gun owners are Democrats. You know, there's a lot of Democrats who don't believe that Joe Biden is going to enact gun legislation. And if they really believe that there's a chance that some of these legislative priorities that Biden has on his website actually have a chance of making it into law, there's going to be a lot of pushback from Democratic voters who put Joe Biden into office. And those legislators that are also Democrats are also going to feel some of that pressure. So I don't think there's going to be a very strong-willed position when it comes to banning guns like this, even though I really do think this is something that they would love to get through. I don't think that there's enough political willpower in the Congress or in the executive branch to get that through. So I've picked some of the predictions. Now, obviously, these are all just opinions, but I picked some things that I'm predicting will actually have a chance of getting through. So first on that list, I talked about red flag laws. Now, you look around the United States, you've read about some of these red flag laws, and in response to that, you've got Second Amendment sanctuaries, you've got states that are refusing to enforce these laws. You've also got sheriffs who are refusing to enforce these laws as well, because they view these as constitutional crises where legislatures have put laws into place that violate people's rights. And I'm going to roll in a video here of a sheriff in Colorado who is pretty vocal about his opposition to the red flag laws that were passed in Colorado.
We're putting a line in the sand for what we believe right now is support constitutional laws.
Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams agrees. He says taking a person's guns before they even have a chance to defend themselves in court is a violation of their rights.
The bill violates the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 8th, the 14th Amendment. It's just a very poorly written bill.
He's also worried about potential danger in showing up unannounced to seize weapons. A gun owner was killed in Maryland last year when police tried to do just that. Reams says he won't enforce the bill if it becomes law, but ignoring it would mean ignoring a court order from a judge. Defiant sheriffs could be found in contempt, which could mean being fined or put in jail until they comply.
Are you willing to sit in your own jail in order to avoid enforcing this law?
Well, obviously no sheriff wants to be confined in their own jail, but that's what it takes to get this bill ironed out, then I guess that's a sacrifice that I'll be forced to.
Now, you know, you get that he's not willing to enforce the law as written, but if you go and do some research, he would enforce a law if it were written in a different way. So, these guys are good. They're good Americans. They understand the Constitution. They understand liberty and freedom and protections from an abusive government. Now, that doesn't mean that these sheriffs aren't willing to enforce gun laws. They're just not willing to violate all of your constitutional amendments to violate those gun laws. So just be aware, these guys are doing good work. They are pushing back against an overreaching government legislation, but it doesn't mean that they won't enforce laws that do violate your gun rights. So just keep that, take that with a grain of salt. Now, there is an organization out there. It's the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and I want to roll in a quick video of their position on when it comes to these types of things as well. So I'll be right back.
The law was reinforced in my Supreme Court case written by Justice Antonin Scalia. Let's examine one part of that, and I am actually reading the book that you can get on our website at cspoa.org, The Victory for State Sovereignty. And in it, he kind of makes it what I would compare to a mathematical equation, or at least a political scientific one. And he says this: residual state sovereignty was implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress, now get this, quote, of not all governmental powers. Well, if they didn't get all governmental powers, which they think they do, they think they can do whatever they want, but if we would enforce the Constitution, especially the states pushing back against federal overreach, was exactly what Sheriff Prince and I did in this lawsuit, then we would protect liberty and we would protect the checks and balances as guaranteed in the Constitution. So if they don't have all governmental powers, what kind of powers do they have? Well, let's go back to Scalia in the Prince-Mack case. He says, but they only have, quote, discrete enumerated ones. So the powers granted in the Constitution to Congress and the federal government are, quote, discrete and enumerated. And so what does enumerated mean? It means they are numbered 1 through, and you can count them. And if you go through the entire Constitution, there's only about 33 powers delegated and granted to the federal government. Everything else, read the 10th Amendment. It says right here that the way that we keep the federal government within its discrete and enumerated powers, and we keep them impotent, and we keep them small, and we keep them out of our lives, is by doing what? He said, is rendered express by the 10th Amendment's assertion. Now the question, according to the law here, is who asserts and who enforces the 10th Amendment? Well, that's the states.
So you see in that video, guys, that there are good peace officers out there that are willing to push back against these laws. I've shown you a couple now. And there's an article that came out in Forbes, and I'll put a link to that in the description below where you guys can go and read it. But in that article, the author, it's an editorial, so it's not, take it for what it's worth, right? It's in Forbes. But he does talk about how this will increase the likelihood that there'll be a lot of pushback by local municipalities and states that don't support any kind of gun control. So what you end up with is these sanctuary cities or the sanctuary states. If the local peace officers in those jurisdictions try to enforce these federal laws, the states and the local municipalities have laws that prevent them from being able to do so. So it takes a lot of their political ideology out of the conversation when it comes to the Second Amendment, and it puts it at a higher states level. And then what you end up with is a 10th Amendment situation where those types of situations have to be litigated at the Supreme Court level in order to determine the legality or the standing of these types of laws. So, this is a long fight. This is going to happen. This is going to last for a long time. But if we do see these laws, red flag laws, universal background checks, and raising the legal age to 21, these are areas where fights will spring up. Now, is there going to be stomach to support that kind of legislation? I don't know. We'll have to see. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are. And are there other laws that you think have a chance of actually making it on the books that I'm not really considering in this video? Throw those in the comments too. I'd be interested to hear what your opinions are. Another thing that I find interesting is if you go to the Brady campaign's website, you know, they're a very anti-gun website, but they use a lot of rhetoric, a lot of hyperbole to talk about gun owners as being right-wing extremists and that sort of thing. But there's an interesting thing there when they're talking about who's behind a lot of these sanctuary cities. And it was interesting that they brag about how they've been able to use FOIA requests in order to find the information on who's driving a lot of the narrative. And they've given a lot of credit to the NRA. Now, I know a lot of you guys have opinions about the NRA. I've not been pleased with Wayne LaPierre when it comes to his positions and how he's handling and running that nonprofit. But like I've said in other videos, and if you haven't seen it, I'll link it. You know, there's a lot to be said about supporting these gun rights organizations, including the NRA. So anyway, again, throw in the comment sections. Do you guys agree the NRA has some legitimacy, some viability, or is Wayne LaPierre such a cancer to that organization? It's better if we just let it die and be buried. I have my opinions, but I'd like to hear yours. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about the raising the age of gun ownership to 21. We know that's a very small step. It's a very impactful step, especially if you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, having the rug pulled out from underneath you and saying you're old enough to join the military, you're old enough to be out on your own, you're old enough to vote, but you're not old enough to own a firearm because that's too much responsibility for your young mind. I think is another infringement I think is worthy of fighting. But I think that they'll try to pass that just because it impacts such a small segment of the population, but they feel that they would get a big win out of that. So I do think they'll try to do that one, even though it's not going to withstand constitutional scrutiny, but somebody's got to be impacted and willing to take that to the Supreme Court to fight it. Another one that I didn't really talk about yet, but I really think has a chance of making it is the no-fly list. I think that's another one like the red flag laws that, you know, you are tried and convicted in absentia. You've never really had an opportunity to plead a case and you're losing your ability to have access to your rights. I don't think that one will stand either, but it doesn't mean that they won't try it. It's another simple win, and it's one they talk about a lot. I think it'll get a lot of negative press, and therefore I think even if they do get it in, it's definitely not going to stand. So none of these gun laws I really think are going to make it, are going to make it towards constitutional scrutiny. That's why I think Joe Biden's best efforts are trying to persuade the states to infringe on your laws, because of the whole conversation about the 10th Amendment and what we're seeing about the states' rights and the enumeration of powers to the federal level. So that's all I got for this video, guys. I want to try to keep it as short and concise as possible. Again, if you want to find links, I'll have links linked in the description below. I think there's a fight for the Second Amendment that we're going to see, and I'm keeping my eyes open, keeping my ears open. I want to know when these types of bills have a chance of actually making it out of committee and to the House floor, because that's when the fight really begins. So until next time, guys, if you want to follow me on my other social media, I'm on Parler, I'm on MeWe, I'm on Instagram. I do upload to Rumble and Bitchute.com as alternative platforms. So if you like to watch content on those platforms, look for me there, Jeff_Tack, on all these other alternative social media sites. So until next time, guys, like, subscribe, share with your friends, throw comments in the comments section, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.